Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bikini in the Brain. We have ourselves a very special guest.
We got ourselves a special one this week.
Yes.
Very special one.
Go right ahead, Ashley.
So we have the amazing, the talented, the informative, the intelligent Becky Clawson, who is an NPC and IFBB head judge, and she used to be an IFBB bikini pro herself. So she knows her stuff, as well as she also dabbled in figure as well a little bit in the beginning. So Becky, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself here on our podcast today?
I'm not sure I can say much more about myself. You said some really nice stuff there. I'm really flattered. Let's see. I competed for about, I think, 11 years in the NPC and the IFBB in both figure and bikini. Started judging, I think, in 2009 or 2010, and I've been doing that ever since. And I guess that's it. I mean, I love what I do. I love the opportunity to do, everything from local level shows up to the big ones, the pro shows. I just really enjoy it. It's kind of my way to give back, I guess, to the industry.
Yes, and for those of you who don't know, Becky does judge quite a bit of the shows, the big ones and the small ones, but she's made quite a name for herself in the judging realm because I'm always seeing you. And one thing that I always notice about Becky is she's very, very well spoken. She's very educated on the subject, so she really knows her stuff. I feel like, Becky, you are going to be the future Sandy, for real.
Oh, that is so nice of you to say.
Yeah, I mean, girl, you're getting up there, man. You're really, I'm impressed. You've come a long way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I know you've been doing pro shows for a while, but I remember seeing your first head judge pro show. Was it 2 years ago at the South Dakota? What is it? This?
I think it was just last year.
Falls
just last
show?
year.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, your path to judging. I know you said you started in 2010. Things have obviously evolved a whole bunch since then. So how did you all, and for people out there, because actually a lot of people want to be judges, so how does someone go about?
Which is great.
That? Yeah, I actually like judging myself. Whenever I don't have a competitor in a show, I'm always like, I'll judge for free. It's so fun to do. But I have a competitor in the show, so you can't judge. Just so you guys know, you can't judge if you have a competitor in the show. Sometimes you'll be allowed to step back when your competitors are competing, but you can't judge your competitor. That's a big no-no. So, I'm
glad you said that though, because sometimes people get confused. They think that judges have their own athletes in the show, and they don't. They're not allowed to judge their own athletes. So yeah. I'm glad you said that.
If you do, you have to step back at least that class type of thing. And if your client won, you couldn't judge the overall type of thing. So obviously, because it wouldn't be very fair. So, tell us a little bit about how you got started in this and how everything's kind of evolved for you.
Sure. I got started, whatever year it was, 2009, 2010, because I took a break from competing. My body was worn out. I had some health issues. So I was forced to take a break, and I thought, what am I going to do with myself? After all of this. And I didn't know if I could come back to competing at that point. Wasn't really sure what my future held, but I knew I loved the industry. So I just mentioned it to our local chairman, or our state chairman, and he hooked me up with test judging, which is the way you go. You contact your chairperson and ask if you can test judge, and you have to get within a certain percentage right for the entire show in order to be certified as a judge. So that's how someone would do it if they were interested in it. So I started judging on the local level, doing as much as I could to kind of learn from the team around me. And I'm in the Mid-Atlantic zone, so I'm super fortunate because I get to work with Rick Bayardi, Gary Udit, all the guys out of Pittsburgh and stuff. So I get really good hands-on feedback and teaching to skill me up as far as a judge. And from then on, I just kept trying to do more and more in the sport. I expedited some of the big shows in Pittsburgh. And I think that was key in making me especially a good head judge, because it kind of tells you how the show is running. So, from sitting out, at the judges table, what's probably going on backstage if you've expedited. And that's a really important part of being a head judge. You're trying to run the show, trying to make sure everything looks good on stage, but also so there's no breaks in the flow of the show. So the audience like doesn't see anything like a break in the flow. So the athletes are on stage on time. They are continuously, you know, up and off and everything. And I think expediting really filled in and rounded out my knowledge of that. And then from there, I had the opportunity to test judge nationally, which is a whole other ball of wax. That's pretty tough. And a lot of people don't pass the first time because it is really, it's so many athletes, so many good athletes. You really have to be quick. You have to be able to spot who jumps right out at you just from sometimes groups that are brought out. So that's definitely a challenge. If you can get past that, then you're judging on the national level, kind of gives you a little more confidence, even judging on the local level. And then as far as being a pro judge, I never really asked specifically to be a pro judge. I just said, what can I do next? Like, what more can I do? I want to do more in the industry. What would the next step be for me? But I never said anything specific. And they said they thought that was the next step. And so away I went, and here I am.
And look at you now on the up and up. So we do have some judging related questions for you, because I know Coach Adam gets them quite frequently, and you probably get them so much. So I think it's great just to, you know, put it all out there, and that way, you know, people are more educated and they have a better understanding of like what the judges are looking for and how it's judged. So let's say in the past 2 years, Becky, how do you think bikini in particular has changed or evolved?
I think actually recently we've tried to be really serious about sticking to the criteria. Not that we weren't before. We are always very set on the criteria, but it's natural in any sport like this for competitors to push the limits. You know, everybody wants to have more muscle. Everybody wants to come in leaner. You know, you want to better your best self. You know, what I did last time, I want to beat that. So naturally in every division, the division is maybe going to grow a little bit as far as muscularity, being lean. But for bikini, it's our gateway division. It really needs to remain something that looks appealing and attainable to somebody just new to bodybuilding. And so we've really held the line on conditioning and muscularity in that division. And not that we ever did in the past, but as I said, athletes try to push the limit. So you start to see some athletes on stage that maybe have a little bit more muscle, are a little bit leaner than what the criteria would call for. So I think we've been really emphatic about keeping it to nice feminine muscle, conditioned and fit, but definitely not, you know, separated, no glutes etched in, you know, things like that Sandy always talks about.
Absolutely. So while we're kind of on that subject, if you want to clarify even further beyond the etched glutes, is there any signs that maybe bikini, like if you're a bikini competitor, to be careful of, like any separation anywhere else, so that they know maybe more clearly what you don't want to see as a bikini athlete?
I'd say along with that, maybe separated quads is also, you know, it's one thing if you're standing there and you see them once in a while, but if you're walking out and your quads split all the way up, like that's probably not a good sign. In the upper body, I would say shoulders that are extremely separated or especially striated. Sometimes you see that in girls who get really lean, or in girls who are trying to get their lower body in and their upper body gets so conditioned that you start to see like banded shoulders and things like that. That's definitely not something we'd want to see.
Okay, cool. And is there any signs, like, I guess, what's the sweet spot in bikini where if somebody's too lean, you described maybe signs that they're too lean or too muscular, but on the opposite end of things, maybe something you don't want to see on the softer end, like, let's see, skin folds or any jiggle? Or is there anything on the softer end that you don't want to see?
I would say, like you said, definitely the jiggle. Like you can tell when they walk if it's like muscle or if it's fat, which interestingly enough, that's why we have bikini competitors walk, because you can see a lot of difference in conditioning when you girls walk. It's sometimes some girls are really good at posing, and when they're just standing there, it might look acceptable, but when you see them walk, then it's like, okay, like now I can tell a little bit more what's going on with the conditioning level. Some are leaner than others. And so I would say it's kind of that jiggle factor. And then also sometimes if girls just aren't conditioned enough or aren't tight enough, they're just a little bigger in size. Like they look a little thick almost.
Yeah.
And you know, they're not.
I've
Yeah.
done that before.
Oh, me too, girl. Me too. And you look and it's like, you know, maybe they're not completely like out of shape, but they almost look too big, especially if they've got like some upper body muscle. It looks too thick for the division. And that's where it's like, you got to bring everything down so your size fits the division as well.
Awesome. So Adam had wanted to ask you a question about how some girls can pull off being a little bit lean and some girls can be a little softer.
Yeah, especially you see it a lot at the pro level, especially too, that a judge will kind of like a competitor a certain way, you know, and like them just being a little bit softer because it looks better for their frame. And then they'll like someone like Ashley who they want her leaner, you know. If we get even a little bit softer with Ashley, they're like, oh, it's too much. It could be like 1 or 2 pounds like difference, you know. So, but then you have other people who have a lot wider margin for their frame. And maybe it's a hard thing to explain to people that that girl just looks better when she's softer and she can't get shredded. And that's what the judges like from her. And I get a lot of questions about that. That's what I get probably some of the most questions I'll get is something about that, you know, how come this conditioning, she won with this conditioning? How come she won with this conditioning? And then I'll get coaches to be like, how do you figure it out? I just can't figure out bikini. And I'm like, well, the first problem is you're trying to figure it out. It's different. It's different per girl. Just think of the class of bikini is different per girl, and then you'll be fine and just mold that girl to that class. But is there something maybe you can explain on that being a little bit, because it is a confusing thing when you see, like for example, if you look at Itala and Ashlyn at the last show when Itala won versus Ashlyn, it was a completely different level of conditioning between those two, and almost between those two in the top 10 were completely different. So it's hard to explain that to someone why she can pull that off. So is there any feedback you have on that?
I think we're always looking at conditioning as far as you can't be over the line for sure. We don't want somebody who is too lean. I think sometimes you might see someone win a show who looks like borderline. But again, people have to remember, we just judge what's in front of us. If everybody comes in super lean, your winner's going to be lean. And that's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
Remember there was a show last year that was, the people were shredded. It was in Texas last year. Who won that one? I forget. I think it was Hannah won that one, but everyone was so shredded in that show. It was crazy. That show was nuts. It was like, what are they going to pick from you? You have to be shredded in that show.
And if you're one of the softer ones, you're going to definitely stand out, and maybe not in a good way. It is like a little bit of a gamble you take, and who shows up is going to make you look either softer or harder. And of course, different body frames can carry body fat differently. You know, if I put on a little more softness, it's not necessarily going to go in the right places. It might go to my stomach, or it might go to it usually actually goes underneath my butt cheeks, which I don't want to do there. But you know, it is what it is. Some girls are just blessed and they can distribute their softness a little better. But you know, for me, I think I pop a little better if I am a little bit on the leaner side. So it's always like one of my struggles is finding that fine line between I want to pop and I don't want to come across too like lean either. So it's something we all have to experiment with, I guess, you know, because a lot of girls
I totally agree.
Like, oh, this girl won this show and she's really ripped. Now I got to get ripped too. Or they'll see a girl that won, she's super soft. Oh, I got to get soft too. And that doesn't necessarily translate into their own personal body type, because we're all different, right? So we're all going to hold it differently. So when people see pictures and they don't know like the backstory behind everything else, they can oftentimes get a skewed view of what they're actually looking for, because their body isn't the same as the competitors.
I totally agree with that. And I think we see that a lot, especially I would say in the amateurs. Like they look at the pro photos, that's what they're shooting for. The photos always make you look harder than you did in person, pretty much always. And depending on the lighting, it can make you look really hard. And if you're shooting for that, you're going to overshoot your goal. You're going to show up and be way too lean. And like you said, some people can get lean and their whole body looks the same, because we are looking for, you know, balance front to back, top to bottom, side to side. And that's with muscularity and with conditioning. And for some girls to get like their bottom half in and lean enough, their upper body gets shredded.
Yeah, they just have to make that sacrifice. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like you got to juggle it. You got to figure it out. It's like one of those things, it's ongoing. You know, you got to try several different looks to see what's the best for you. But no two people are the same. So, you know?
Yep. Totally agree.
So we kind of talked about what you're not looking for in bikini, but let's talk about what you are looking for. What would you describe to be as the perfect bikini physique? If you give a little brief description.
Sure. I am a shape girl. I love shape. I love a pretty shape. I like that bodybuilding on down. I really like, in bikini, I guess we call it the hourglass shape, you know, in bodybuilding, it's that X frame. But I like, you know, rounded shoulders with a, you know, a little bit of muscle on the shoulders, of course, a tight waist, and then curvy legs and glutes. Of course, we're not looking for, you know, a ton of quads or hamstrings, but I like, you know, shapely legs on a girl. Just so she's balanced and looks like it's not all glutes with really thin legs. I do kind of look for that. For me, it's also, I think about skin tone and conditioning, you know, nice, like pretty even skin. She's tight enough, but obviously not super separated. That kind of, to me, that's like a fresh look. That's a healthy look. Like it looks like someone, you know, got in shape the right way, because your skin shows like what's going on in your body. And if you're sick or something's off, it could show in your skin. So I feel like that gives like a healthy overall appearance in the first place. And then of course, it's just like the presentation. Confidence is so important in bikini, how you present yourself, especially now. Oh my goodness. I was talking to a few girls who are considering going to nationals later this year, and they have great physiques, but I'm like, you need to amp up the confidence or you will get eaten alive on that stage. Like there's so many top competitors now. Like I would die. I don't even know if I'd turn pro. Seriously, at this level, there's so many good girls. And so to stand out, you need to have that extra about you. You need to make sure, first of all, your whole entire look is flattering and again, healthy looking. And then that your confidence and how you present yourself on stage is super important. So I would say all of those things put together, when someone comes out and they have all of that, they just stand out as having that it factor. And you're like, wow, that girl is probably going to do well. And it's kind of uncanny, but we can all spot it. And usually that person is either the winner or they do really well. You can just spot it as soon as they come out.
The wow factor.
It's weird. I was, it's funny because I was sitting next to Shane Hughley, who's like a big prep coach. You probably know who he is too. Yeah, we're at some national show. We're like talking, and there's like, you know, 500 bikini girls at a national show, I don't know, 300 or something like this. I'm crazy. And we're both talking, and then as soon as this girl walked out, we both just like stopped talking because she caught our eye, and we're both looked at each other. We're like, well, that's the winner. That girl's gonna be the one that wins. We're like, dude, it was so like it's so weird to explain that, because you can't really explain the it factor. You know, it was just like. Right. She walked out and I was like, okay, that's the overall. Like we didn't even see the rest of the classes yet, but we're like, I highly doubt anyone's going to be more, you know, more special than that at this one. And she just came out, she rocked it. She won the overall. It was kind of funny because we were both like mid-sentence, we're like, who's that? Right. You see it and people don't understand that. And one of the things that actually a judge told me a while back, I forget what judge it was. It might've been Rick. You're probably familiar with Rick too. He's a pro level judge. He's out here in Colorado, or used to be out here in Colorado. And he told me, well, the look that we're going for in bikini is essentially, think of a girl on the beach who's like pretty fit, but looks really, really healthy. And it looks like she just looks like that every day. Like even if she looked like that every day, but we don't want to see a girl who like is all prep faced out, who's totally, you know, gaunt in the face, who like had a really hard prep, and you can tell when you see them. And all they have is a good body with their face looking just like it's been put through the ringer for hours and hours of cardio and no calories for 6 months type of thing. He's like, so think of it as if a girl just woke up and just looked fit and had a tan and walked outside like that day, it was just Tuesday. That's how we want her to look on stage. And that was kind of a really good description for me, because like even like Ashley's peak week right now, she's like cruising into peak week. She's increasing her calories, her cardio is decreased, and it's like it creates a really fresh, healthy, vibrant look that you can't really explain from like a that it does help. You know, that it doesn't make sense that it helps, but it does. It's just you look better, you look healthier, everything, you're glowing. And I always explain that like complexion is a huge factor in it. And
It is.
yeah, and people don't understand that. Like I say skin tone and they're like, I don't understand that. I'm like, yeah, everything matters in bikini. It's a fitness model. It's a fitness model contest. It's not just bikini bodybuilding. It's a fitness model contest. So yeah, so I that was really helpful for me. Hopefully that helps out some of the people if that was described in a way that you think was right.
No, absolutely. I mean, the original idea with bikini was, you know, it should be a girl who looks like she works out, but she could, you know, get ready for a show in a short amount of time. You know, like she should be able to walk around kind of, you know, in that kind of same shape and just prep herself for a short amount of time, get on stage and be competitive. Like that should be the kind of healthy fit that someone is. And so like these girls who think that they've got to hardcore diet, like you said, no carbs, stuff like that for weeks on end. And of course the dreaded hashtag shredded, you know, they hashtag it, you know, get in the shreds or whatever it is. It's like, no, that's not what bikini is meant to be. Like it shouldn't be that kind of goal or that kind of prep for you.
Yeah. And so I guess I got an evolution question for you too. So obviously we've seen bikini get harder from the beginning. It's gotten a little bit harder, a little more muscular. It almost looks like figures of before days type of thing.
When I did it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yes.
you see like Aaron Stern going from figure to now bikini,
Yep.
and having relatively close to the same amount of muscle when she was winning figure competitions, you know, a little smaller, but not like dramatically small like you would see now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I was talking to one of the judges, and he was talking about wellness being the big bridge between bikini and figure, and that having some effect potentially on bikini being a little less athletic, a little bit more back to bikini, and wellness being the more athletic division of them now. Is that, have you heard anything about that? Is that just maybe a thought and not a thing? Where do you see bikini going, I guess, in the future with now wellness being introduced? If it, maybe it has no effect on it whatsoever, I don't know.
I don't think it really has much effect on bikini. I think we continue to do what we're trying to do right now, which is hold the line on muscularity and conditioning in bikini. And I think it's more possible now because we have more and more top pros who are an example of what we're looking for with, you know, the right level of conditioning and muscularity. So we have some good examples out there. I feel like wellness is totally different in its own division. I know people think it's in between figure and bikini, and it is in the regards that you said. It's definitely much more athletic legs. But for the upper body, you know, we don't want shoulders much bigger than bikini, which has been the issue when I see women coming down from figure into wellness. Their upper body's too big and their lower body's too small. So they've got to like tone down their upper body, bring up their legs. And then likewise, we see girls going from bikini to wellness and their upper body's fine, but they have to build their legs. Like, I think that people aren't really, until you see these girls in person, you don't get how much leg muscle they have and how hard they work for it. Like, have you guys watched some of those training videos? Like,
oh yeah, I saw that.
It's insane. They work really hard.
We were at the LA Fit Expo when it was the first American wellness show. That was, and then they had a whole team of Brazilians there. There's like, I think there was like 20 something of them, and these girls were like just walking around the expo, and they had like booty shorts, like cut off jean booty shorts, and like I was like, who are these girls? Like it didn't even make sense that they're just walking around. I was like, there's so many of them. This doesn't even make sense. And I was like, oh, it's the wellness division's debut. That's what they competed yesterday. That's what it was. And their legs are so jacked. Like people don't, I think, understand like how jacked their legs are.
Yes.
They're so jacked. And yeah, I get a lot of like bikini girls that are maybe have a little bit of softness to their lower body. Like, I think I should do wellness. And I'm like, no, that's you're pounds away of your leg muscle from that. Like 10 pounds at least, you know, to get there. So, and the glutes and legs are just so muscular. I think people really need to hear that and understand just because you're a little bit thick on the lower body for bikini, it's still miles away from wellness, you know? So
yes. And I think that's the learning curve here, especially because wellness is a brand new division here in the States. Like in other countries, I think they're a little bit more familiar and they kind of get the concept of that silhouette and that body type. But here, I think it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. You know, girls are going to have to put in some serious time to get to that level. And I think from it just not being around those kind of athletes, they may not conceptualize that yet. But yeah, it's not just the glutes, it's the quads and the hamstrings, especially the quads. Like some of those girls have some amazing shape to their quads. And that's the part that sets that division out, I think, so much from everything else, is just that all around leg development. Yeah. And so thinking about, you know, the original question, yeah, I guess it's kind of between bikini and figure, in that if you really want to pound your legs and really build some serious muscle, it's there for you, which I think is great. And it's also a good option for the way a lot of women are built. You know, a lot of women are, you know, lower body dominant. Building your upper body can be really hard. And likewise, for a girl to compete in bikini, I see a lot of them that have to like run their legs down, you know, diet super hard to get muscle off, which is such a painful process. And it makes me sad. It's like, if you have that ability, you know, you should have an outlet to take advantage of that and build it and capitalize on your genetics and your physique. And I'm really happy that this division is here now, because maybe some people can grow into it and it'll be a little bit easier on their body to compete with that body type.
Yeah, it's been like a savior to a lot of my bikini athletes of, you know, a year ago that couldn't do that had to like run their legs off, you know, and it was hard because you can't ever really feed those girls because they have to lose muscle. And if you're giving them even adequate calories, they don't lose any muscle, you know? So it's like, you got to be in this caloric deficit. You got to do endurance-based activity on your legs. You got to hope they come down. It almost never does. It's like, it's so slow. It's a grueling process in a caloric deficit the whole time. And it's really grueling. So as soon as you get them doing wellness and they're like, you know what, I think I'll just embrace it and do legs. All of a sudden they're getting to work out legs again, sometimes 3 times a week in the gym, training legs, and they're happy that they're working out. You know, I like the division for that. You know, I feel like it's healthier for a lot of people who are kind of going the other direction and fighting their genetics, you know, and I think if you're one of the people listening to this, you really got to consider your genetics. If you've been one of those girls who can't get your legs down and low enough, and you are doing like, you're not liking your workouts now because you haven't worked out legs in 6 months, like maybe this is for you. You know, it's been a big help to a lot of my girls who just can't fit that bikini division. So I've really liked it for that, because I'm like, okay, start eating and start training legs like a boss, you know, and just go in there and just crush it. And they just are so much happier in the gym too, because of that, getting back to that lifting heavy again type of thing. So, so as far as I guess going back to that original question, it sounds like bikini has reached its peak in conditioning, in muscularity, and if anything, you guys might be trying to grab hold of it and making sure you're saying, hey, no more. And there's a couple athletes that maybe you're coming in a little closer to the ideal criteria, and you might be giving them more of the reward than having everyone being just a little bit who's kind of evolved a little bit too far past the standard of what you want. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say so. You know, we're definitely not going to reward someone who's pushed the boundaries too far. I would say like what Tyler said about wellness. He said, you know, if anything, we're going to err on the side of being a little softer. It doesn't mean out of shape, you know, but we will err more on the side of softer to maintain the division and the standards and the criteria. And I would say the same holds for bikini.
Right.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like if you have one girl who's really hard and one girl who's a bit too soft, it seems to go like the girl who's a bit too soft would get the placing above the girl who's too hard, you know, type of thing. Yes. And there's that like thought process. And I used to think this way too, but I've done this 20 years. So I'm like, the judges have kind of like beat me into this is how you win. This is how you think. And it's just, there's no other way to do it. You can't fight it. And so I used to think, well, if they're both off, shouldn't the one who worked harder get it? But that's not the way it goes, right? That's not the logic used there, because they're farther away from the division, basically, is what the statement is, essentially. And I think a lot of it is just getting control of the division and making sure that you're not rewarding those physiques, and then they're going to push you even further, right? So it makes a lot of sense now. When I was younger, I was like, but that doesn't make sense. So right. I think a lot of people think that same way, but I'm like, oh, well, a lot goes into it. If you start awarding these girls and then they keep pushing even farther and farther, well, then the next thing you know, you got full on figure in 5 years, you know?
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
okay, cool.
So shifting topics a little bit here, I want to know, Becky, what common mistakes do you see bikini competitors make? The most common mistakes, or I guess most common misconceptions too, can be wrapped up in that as well, that you're like constantly seeing, and maybe you're just like, hey, listen, stop with that. You know, I know one of them is the posing with the teacup. That's one of them.
Yes.
But there's got to be ones that you just keep seeing over and over and over, and you're just like, stop. What are some of those?
I would have to say, I'm thinking of posing right now just because I just finished a show where it was pro and amateur. The pros pretty much have it down. On the amateur level, it's about posture. I think posture is so important. And, you know, there's a ton of posing errors that I saw this past weekend that definitely need to be fixed. But I think so much can be fixed with proper posture, like standing upright, keep your chest up, your stomach in, your back arched, your glutes out. I see women walk out and they think that we're not judging until they hit their first pose, but it's like, no, we're looking at you the entire time. And if your hips are tucked under, it might make it look like your stomach is sticking out. Your glutes might look flat. You create like a crease under your glutes, like your shoulders don't look wide. There's just so much that you can do with just standing upright. Mm-hmm. And I feel like just keeping that posture, even when you're transitioning or when you're walking and stuff, and that's pretty much any division. I mean, women's physique on down, just hold yourself in the right posture. And it does wonders for your physique. Again, you want to hide your flaws. We're looking for your flaws. So don't give it to us like by walking out, you know, kind of hunched over. Mm-hmm. That stands out to me right away.
Okay. You know, something Adam and I noticed, I guess in the last few years, is there are way more diverse hairstyles on stage.
Yes.
Because I remember, you know, back in the day, like when Becky was competing, I was competing, it was kind of like either way your hair straight or curly with little tees. And we didn't really see much of any hair clips. We didn't see much like short hairstyles or different colors. It was always said like, you know, go with a natural tone of hair. Can you kind of touch on that subject a little bit? How, you know, maybe girls can be a little more free with their hairstyles if they thought that back in the day it could only be a certain way, that maybe that's not as important as long as it goes with the physique and your personality and all that?
Yep. We definitely have seen a huge change. I remember back when I was competing, you and I had this conversation, like everyone thought it was dark hair only. That's all that won. You know, that just was the predominant style. And there were very few styles that people used. Now it's changed quite a bit and I'm all for it. I think that
it's fun, right?
Whatever. Yeah, exactly. And it creates a different look on stage. I think more than anything, it makes the athlete feel more confident. If they can do their hair the way they like it, it totally impacts their confidence and their stage presence for them to be able to wear their hair as they like it. Hair does a lot for like how your body looks and stuff. And I think considering that and considering what they really like and what they really want is definitely a positive. I think it creates just different looks and different champions too for other people to look up to and say like, wow, she's unique looking. Like I could do this even though I have a more unique look and stuff like that. Absolutely. So I really like it. I mean, last year we had Natasha won, I think it was the Iowa Pro or something. She has short hair. She has a pixie cut, which is risky. And I always tell people it's risky if you have your hair short because then your back's exposed. Yes. So your conditioning for your back has to be exactly right. Like you can't be too hard, can't be too soft, but her entire physique was on that day. She looked great. And I think her look, again, like when she walked out, she had it. Like she looked very confident, very pulled together. I think one thing I see that is a mistake is girls with really long hair or extensions. If they're too long and they're like on their lower back, like covering up almost like the top of their suit, that's too long.
Yeah,
And
he
that,
always is a big advocate of that. Like if it looks like a curtain, you can't even see the taper
yes,
of your back. It just
yes,
curtain.
yeah,
Yeah.
You can't, how can you judge just that?
I
It's like
say
hard.
go basically right to the straps is where I kind of
yes,
say the high of the suit is, so you can still see the lower back.
And taper it in too.
Yeah, and one of the
yeah,
things too that I notice is when people have really long hair that like sits on top of the glutes don't look as 3D because you almost have a curtain kind of 3 inches, 2 inches from your back, so your glutes aren't as 3D. So I want to create that 3D effect as much as possible, and it makes your waistline look smaller because when you're arching your back like that, your waist could be 3 inches away, 4 inches away from the back end of your glutes, but your hair can block half of that.
yes,
So I think it
yes,
really makes a big difference on the waist to hip ratio to get that nailed right. So
yep.
and I see that I see that being a common mistake too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I think it really does affect placing because it just makes you look like your glutes aren't as pronounced, and it makes your waist look thicker too. So yeah. So make sure you dial your hair in, dial your hair in.
And I have to ask you a super specific question because actually it's actually more towards for me, but I'm sure a lot of people want to know too. So people that have, hair like this, maybe longer
Mm-hmm.
hair. Now, do you like it all in front, all in back, one on the side? I know sometimes you can't help it because once you start doing this,
Right.
and this, it kind
Right.
of gets back there anyway. But is there like something that you're like, oh, I'd rather just see it maybe just on one side instead of it being all in front? Or what's your take on that? Or any suggestions or tips when it comes to placement of hair when you're posing?
That's a great question. I think it's fine, however, from the front, as long as you don't like cover up your entire physique.
Yeah,
Because we
sometimes
do
it's
want to
just
see,
that,
yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then you don't see the full, again, you don't see the curve to the waistline. You don't
Right.
see it going from the shoulders down into the waistline. So I would say as long as your physique's not hidden, that's fine. From the back, if you've got your hair in front, it's important to like put it all in the
Oh,
back,
yeah.
I think,
Mhm.
so that it all looks uniform. Sometimes you'll see a few pieces on the back or like half of it, and it just looks asymmetrical. So I
Right.
think it's best to, flip your hair to the back when you're in the back pose. Other than that, as long as it doesn't hide your physique, I think
Mhm.
whatever you like is fine.
Yeah, that makes sense. I always try to keep like one half here and one half in the back, and then by the time I get to the back, it's all in the back anyway. But at least
Yes.
for some pictures, it looks nice on this one side.
Yes. Yes.
So do you want to kind of like just so
No,
we're kind of on the subject right now? Can you tell why we don't prefer the back in bikini or why we don't want to see it? I mean,
Yes.
pros know this, but maybe some amateurs just getting started are like, why don't we see the back? Or why in other federations they show the back and then here we don't.
Mhm.
So
Well, in bikini, we don't judge back development. It's more about shape. I'd say, for everything on the body in bikini, it's about shape. Like it's a feminine physique built on a foundation of muscle. So we're not, looking at arm development. We're looking at rounded shoulders because it creates a nice hourglass. Same with glutes, same with everything all the way down. I feel like, and this has never been stated, but to me, like back development is a lot more maturity.
right.
Like that takes some time. That's for divisions where we want more muscle maturity. So it makes sense that we wouldn't judge it in bikini. That's something that takes time, and we don't want to see like a lot of thickness or whatever there. That's just not what this division is about. And I always tell girls, and I know that hopefully this rumor has been killed for the most part, but there are still girls who like to move their hair off their back. And unless you're a pro, like some pros can do it, I just say absolutely not. Like if you're one side or the other for conditioning, you're just going to let us see that. And it could skew how we judge you. Like if you're not quite tight enough and, we see you've got like a roll or two, like around your, where the bikini top is, or if you're super lean, you might look more muscular than what we want. And we won't want to see that. And that's going to affect our impression of you overall. So I always tell people, cover up your back. All we need to see is the shoulders. We just need to see that outline. So keep your hair on your back just to avoid any deductions for it.
Yeah. And I have a question for you that actually I used to know the answer, and maybe now I don't know the answer anymore because it's been changing quite a bit, which I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of the hair being, how we talked about the hairstyles being totally all over the place now, short hair being okay. That was, what before it was like, hey, this is your choices, blonde or brunette,
Right.
long, straight or curly. Let's go with one of those. You're going to be fine. Like that was it. But then you're starting to see people. I mean, there's a girl, I think, did she win the overall at a national competition? She was completely shaved head, or she won
Oh
the
yeah.
pro. I do know that. I don't know if she won the overall.
Yep.
I was like, man, they're really, it's whatever now, you know, that's cool. Like, I'm glad. I like to see that there's more flexibility in that now, because there's a lot of girls that just didn't want to, you know, have longer hair, buy extensions or whatever. So I was like, now it's kind of like whatever. But is there anything that's too much? Like, I was telling people, you know, use a natural hair color. Is pink out of the question now? Is blue out of the question now? Or is it just completely not a factor as much anymore?
It's not as much of a factor. I will say with the bright hair colors like pink and blue, it's hard to pull that off if your hair's not healthy. Like that's my big thing. Like I've seen girls pull it off, but their hair looks very smooth and sleek. And again, that's what we're looking for, is an overall healthy appearance. I feel like that's why a lot of people wear long hair, because that typically subconsciously is associated with, you know, being healthy and vibrant and things like that. So if your hair doesn't look healthy with those colors, like it's kind of messy on stage and stuff, I think that's going to detract. I've seen some girls do it and do it well, and their hair looks well styled. Again, it looks healthy. I think that's totally acceptable. I do think it's harder with those hair colors to coordinate with like the tan and your suit and everything. That's my main concern with that. I've seen a few girls pull off that bright red. You know what I'm talking about? That real bright red color. The risk on that is making sure your tan doesn't clash with it. But I've seen some girls do it and win and do really well. So I think it's just like, how does your hair look with that color? Does it complement you? Does it complement the skin tone? Stuff like that. I think you can definitely win with a different hairstyle, if that's your choice.
Yeah, I'm glad that you guys are doing it. I was like, well, where's the limit? You know, cause before it was so easy. It was like, oh, just long hair, right to your strap, black or bright blonde, curly or straight, and that's pretty much it. You know, that was it. So I am super happy that you guys are kind of getting looser on that. And another thing I think that is important to talk about is the tattoos. You know,
That's a good
you know, because there's a lot of girls. Especially like 5 years ago when I was coaching, be like, oh, I'll never go pro because I have tattoos. And I'm like, you know, it was hard to like tell them, no, that's not true, because there wasn't really any pros that had tattoos or performing well that had tattoos. And as of recently, I actually saw someone win a pro show with like, she had a lot of tattoos. Like I think it was all the way down to her lower, like to her upper glutes from her back too. And and that was, I think it was a Masters pro show if I'm correct. But so if maybe you can give your insight, like there's a lot of girls out there who think it's a huge factor, and it looks like at this point that it's really not, you know? So maybe you have some insight on that from being a pro judge.
I honestly don't notice tattoos so much anymore. I think tattoos matter more on the different divisions like bodybuilding, maybe figure, but probably not even figure. Probably not even physique. I think it matters where we're looking for separation in your muscle, because then, you know, it can be kind of hard to see what's actually going on if they're fully tattooed. But that's even like an outlier. I don't really notice tattoos so much anymore. And especially in bikini when it's about shape, I think that if everything else is on point, I think it's fine. We never comment on tattoos, that's for sure. So it's not something that we would talk about like this is a negative against somebody. I will say I know some tanning companies will cover up the tattoos, and that tends to look worse than just getting your tan. So I usually tell girls, like, don't worry about covering it up, unless of course there's profanity, which I've never seen a woman with a profane tattoo. So it's usually not the girls we worry about. But I just say, you know, just get your tan, just wear them. Obviously they're a part of you. You like them, and, you know, be confident with them. We actually, a couple of weeks ago at the Ashley, you know, the Ohio State show, there was a girl she was quite tattooed. She actually had them like on her neck, like down to her chest. And we just all remarked, because we had never really seen anything like that. But I mean, it didn't detract from her physique at all. And it kind of seemed like part of her luck, and she ended up winning her class. So I would say it's not a negative at all anymore. Just own it, be confident, and that's it.
Yeah, we had a girl in Colorado when I realized it was changing too, who had she had like a full bat with like wings across her chest, like on her chest. And I was like, oh, they'll never give it to her. That was a couple years back. And then, but she had the best physique, and she won the whole overall too. Like, yeah, doesn't matter, So like,
that's what it's about.
It's like, it really comes down to just your physique, it really does.
Yes. Yes.
So you had any?
Yeah, I want you to briefly go into this phenomenon of, people getting feedback from other people other than the judges, because we see it a lot. Like, they'll listen to their family, their friends. Oh, you should have won. You looked amazing. Even their coaches. Oh, that's worse when their coaches tell them and put these ideas in their head. You look the best. You should have won. Blah, blah, blah. Instead of actually going to the source, which would be you, the judge, for feedback and not really taking that and absorbing that. What do you have to say about that? Because that's one of my pet peeves, is when they just, think that they should have won because their family thinks so, which regardless of how they looked, their family would have said that anyway.
Right.
So if you want to kind of clarify how important it is to get feedback from a judge or a legit source rather than somebody that has a biased opinion.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I do hear that a lot. Even when I give feedback, someone will say, well, my coach likes it better this way. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's who you're trying to please, if that's your goal, is making your coach happy, that's totally fine. But if you're trying to do well in a competition in advance, then you need to take the opinion of the people who are actually judging you. And it's not that, I don't know, their coaches adjust. Adam, you probably feel this way. You adjust as you get feedback too. You kind of see where something is trending or where something is going. Like the coach hopefully is humble enough to take feedback too and say, okay, then this is what we're working with. We're going to make a few changes. Like, it's
coaches need to hear that, because you have to be willing to learn and know that the division is evolving before your eyes. When you have 10 shows going on and it's evolving, you might not even have an athlete in any of those 10 shows that weekend. And then the sport evolved a little bit, so you have to be open and willing to be like, okay, this is what they want now. Now, I also think I do think that some coaches have reached that level where your eye might be better than some of the local level judges. And you're like, okay, I'm not going to listen to Randy, who just started judging, who's been a bodybuilder his whole life on bikini, who's seen 4 bikini classes in his life, right? But when there's a Becky, a Tyler, a Sandy, a Steve, a Gary, these guys, like, when they talk, they just do that. That's simple, very simple. Just that. that's it, And I think that they're always going to steer you in the right direction. And so I try to, like, if Tamer and Tarek too, when I get feedback, I do ask my athletes, okay, who's giving you this feedback? Because this is what I think. And then when they're like, oh, it was Tamer, I'm like, okay, well, let's do that. You can't be so proud. You have to be willing to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe I wasn't right. Maybe we overshot. Maybe they don't like that look on your physique, that type of thing. And especially at the pro level, because they're very specific on who they like and how they like them, and I've done that before, where I've chased other girls with my girl or something. Oh, she's going, we need to do this, and I realized, hey, that's not the way you do it. Whatever she's the best at, don't chase anyone. That's a lesson that I think everyone, should learn from me instead of through my experience. Instead of experiencing it themselves. So yeah. So anyway, sorry to cut you off there, but I thought that was important to talk about. But coaches, you need to be humble and be willing to learn. You'll never advance if you're not willing to learn. And don't trust. And to the girls out there too, unless you have bad friends, every one of your friends is going to tell you should have won. If your friends don't tell you should have won, then you probably just should get some new friends. But that's how that goes, And I think one other thing, maybe when you're talking about this, I'm going on here. Maybe you could talk about how politics in the sport just isn't a thing, and how judges have no idea who your coach is. And even if they did, they wouldn't care. Can we just talk about that?
Yeah, Becky doesn't have time to research everyone on the roster. Becky's a busy woman. She does not have time to research how many followers you have or who's your coach.
Yeah.
That would be a lot.
Yeah. Seriously.
Gosh.
And I mean, for people to say, especially based on social media, like that's what cracks me up. Like Sandy's not on social media, like Steve's not, like, and I can guarantee you, like Tarek and Tamer, they're running their businesses. They're not following people. They're not checking up on people and stuff like that. That doesn't matter anyway. Like that doesn't do anything for us as an industry or as a sport. I never have any idea who anyone's sponsor is. That's for darn sure. I usually don't know anybody's coach. And with everything going on with judging, there's no time to even think about that. Especially for me as a head judge, I'm just trying to slot people. I'm trying to make sure, you know, you control the stage. I'm taking feedback from other judges. Everything in my brain is just planning around those call outs and who looks good and who looks best and who do we want to see next to each other. That's it. And I think the part that people don't consider is that we are, as judges, like what we do is looked at by Tyler, by Jim, you know, like the results of the show are analyzed. And, you know, I'm beholden to them. They're my bosses. So I am trusted to keep the standards and to stick to their criteria. And I owe it to them, as well as my other fellow judges, to be consistent in, you know, who the winner is. What does that top 5 look like? What does that first call out look like? Does that match what we're doing in the industry? And I don't, you know, may sound harsh, but I don't owe anything to one particular athlete. I don't owe anything to the social media audience. I owe it to the sport and to the people that coach me and give me feedback to do a good job and do the right job. So I'm more worried about, am I going to hear from someone, you know, a fellow judge who's like, what the heck was that? Or what happened here? Like, you know, that would be something I would like listen to and be like, well, what do you mean? And not someone on social media who says like, you know, this is politics, this is crap, this or that. Like, I know it's not. I sit at the table every day or every week, and I know no one ever brings that stuff up. No one ever mentions, oh, this person trains with that person, or this person works out there, or this is their sponsor. I have not heard that at the table ever. So I don't hear it. I don't hear it from other judges. If someone could only sit there and see like how quickly we move through stuff and like what our actual conversations are, I think they would figure it out pretty quickly.
It's great. Just so you guys know, it's crazy fast. It's hard to keep up, to be honest, but I've done it a couple times, and judging it's really hard because like it's just so fast. You know, you're marking 1, 2, 3, like you're moving. Sometimes your decision changes when they turn to the back. It's like all these things are happening, and you don't even know who the people are. You know, they look different too because their hair.
Oh, for sure.
Like then how you usually see them at the gym or whatever. You don't even know half the time who they are from that distance too. It's kind of crazy, but it's incredibly fast. So thank you for saying that. I just like to throw that out there too, because people, you know, they come up with their excuses, especially like you'll have like lower level coaches too saying those things. And I'm like, that's not a thing. Like the higher level coaches, they tend to do better because one, they have more people. So yeah, they're, you know, if the percentage is even the same, they look like they're doing better because they have more people doing better. But two, they've been doing it longer, so of course they're better. You know, that's just, you know, I can't go, you know, shoot baskets with LeBron James right now. He'll probably win, you know, because he's been doing it longer than me. That's just a natural thing. It's just like any single thing out there. So yeah, it's not a politic thing. Some guys have more skill set, you know, and that's what happens. So, and there's also protective mechanisms too in the judging, like the high score and the low score gets thrown out. This just to protect, just in case there might have been, which there never is, but just in case there was some bias, you know, or whatever, the high score and the low score goes out. So for some reason, you know, I'm judging my girlfriend and I'm like, oh, I'm going to give her first, but really she didn't look that way. Well, that score gets thrown away anyway. So it doesn't even matter. So, so I guess with that, where are you at? Any questions, you guys?
I think we should let Becky
back to work.
We should let her go back to work, but if she wants to give any final thoughts or statements regarding this whole podcast or the topic of competing in bikini, IFBB, NPC, have at it, Becky. Give some words of wisdom, advice. What's your final thoughts?
Well, I love podcasts like this, which thank you so much for having me on. I just like opening up the communication between judges and athletes. I think for the longest time, and I felt this way as an athlete too, like the judging was confusing. Like not confusing in results, but I was like scared to approach the judges. It was like there was this curtain between us. Like I never wanted to talk to anyone because I was nervous or whatever. And it was kind of a mystery as to how judging worked and everything. Like you knew the criteria, you could tell why certain people won and stuff like that, but you never really got close to asking judges what you really wanted to know. And I feel like it's nice that that's evolved over time and more judges are doing podcasts like this. Like I know Sandy's been doing some, just different, Tamer and Tarek do them and stuff and share some insight. And I feel like that's really important feedback to give to the athletes, not only to help them competitively, but hopefully everyone sees like, this is a pretty transparent sport. To me, it's very black and white. Yes, the decisions are difficult sometimes, but it's a pretty upstanding sport. And I hope that gives people more confidence in it because, you know, myself, I never won a pro show. I was lucky if I was top 10. That's all I ever wanted. And I would go into every show feeling satisfied if I thought, you know what, like I look at that first call out, makes sense to me. Like they all look, you know, about the same. Like I can see what they're going for. I, as an athlete, had faith in the process when I knew more about the process. Mm-hmm. Like, and that way you can accept, you know, whether you get first or last, it's like, all right, I kind of know what's going on here. I trust that I'm going to be treated well. I'm going to be treated fairly. And that kind of keeps you, I don't know, involved and excited about the sport when you don't have to feel negative. Like there's politics or stuff going on. It's really not that complicated. So
yes, I feel like
people believe that.
Yeah, a lot of people, you know, sometimes will use excuses like that as why they didn't do well or whatnot, but it's important to take accountability. And if you want to be proactive, reach out to a judge and people can email you, right? Your email is open. I know you're really good at getting back to people. Stay after the show, ask for feedback on the spot. You know, judges are happy to help because I think if you're a judge, you must love what you do. So doing this makes you happy and you're happy to help as well. And I can tell that it just excites you, you know? So just keep that in mind, guys. You know, it just takes some accountability, make some steps instead of making excuses, make steps to improve your physique and see what you can work on for next time. Every show is a learning experience and we can always improve. I'm still learning, I'm still evolving, and I'm not too proud to get criticism or feedback from a judge or somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Yep. Yeah. Well said.
So with that, well, thank you very much for your time. I know that you're busy.
No, thank you. This was a joy. It was totally my pleasure.
What's the next show you're judging so we can know that? Or I guess the next pro show, I guess we should say. Is that okay to ask first off?
Yeah, that's the schedules are still kind of up in the air.
In advance, I don't know.
No, the schedules are still kind of up in the air just because, you know, shows are still moving around. Like it's crazy. Some of these dates. Hats off to the promoters who've been able to figure this stuff out because honestly, some shows are still changing venues like a week out and stuff, which I'm so thrilled that the promoters are at least still working to do that. Like I would have given up if I was a promoter. There's a reason I'm not a promoter because that'd be too much stress for me.
Right.
But, so we'll see where my next pro show is. In 2 weeks, I'm doing Whitney Weiser's, NPC show. It's like an all girl show. It's in Nashville. I'm super excited to do it. I've wanted to judge that show for like ever since she started it. And see, that's kind of the thing for me. Like I'm excited to do an NPC show as much as a pro show. Yeah. And like, this is such a unique experience. It's going to be like all females. Like, I think it's going to be really fun, a really good environment. So that's my next show. And then after that, I think like nationals and then whatever else is scheduled that I can attend.
Well, I know you're super active on your social media and you give great tips on your Facebook, on your Instagram. So if you want to go ahead and if you want to shout out your social media so people can follow you and learn more and get some tips, maybe that would be great if you want to go and tell them where they can follow you at.
Sure. I'm most active on Instagram and that's FitProBecky. And most of my stuff is in stories, but I also have highlights where I put like judging insights, stage advice, just anything over the years that I thought was helpful, I've saved there. So if someone wants to look at that, hopefully that's at least a good start, especially for new competitors, to give them some kind of, perspective, background, place to start.
Okay. Fit Pro Becky on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we're just to finish off with this, to give you an invite, we're going to be finishing our new contest prep center in Vegas it's like 8 weeks from being done. But if you're ever in that area and maybe want to do a posing seminar or whatever it is, a judging seminar,
sure.
I'd love to have you out. So we'll leave that there, and then wish you a happy day. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Becky.
No,
Have fun.
thank you. All right. Bye, guys.